Hey, what's up? It's your old pal, Mr. Cook. We're working through the 7-1 to 7-3 quiz review. And let's see here. We just got through the 7-1 and the 7-2 stuff, so we're done with the operations of functions and then also the arithmetic of operations. Arithmetic of the functions. And we've also done composite functions from 7.2, where you plug an equation in for another equation. That took on different forms like graphs and also data tables. So the last thing that we're going to do is the inverse functions, 7.3. So there's a 3-step process to solve these problems. The very first step is to change the function, you know, the little f of x or the h of x or the g of x, change that to a y. That's the first step. The second step is to switch all of the x's, they change into y's, and all the y's change into x's, okay? And then the third step that we need to do for our inverse functions is solve for y, okay? 3 steps, and I'm gonna do the same 3 steps each time. It's gonna look a little different, obviously, because they're set up differently. They have adding and subtracting, powers, multiplying, roots, all that kind of stuff. But these 3 steps are what we're going to follow to get an inverse function. And once you do solve for y, that actually gives you the inverse function. Okay, so that's what we're going to end up looking for. Okay, so starting off with h of x is equal to parentheses x minus 2 to the 3rd power minus 1. So I'm going to change that h of x to a y. So y is equal to x minus 2 to the 3rd minus 1. That's step 1. Change f of x to y. Step 2, change the x's to y's and the y's to x's. So this y turns into an x, and then this x turns into a y. All right, so that's all done. Now I just have to solve for y, get y all by itself. And to do that, I'm going to follow the inverse, you know, the opposite of the order of operations, PEMDAS. So I start by getting rid of any addition and subtraction, so I get rid of the minus 1, so I add 1 to both sides. That becomes x plus 1 is equal to y minus 2 to the 3rd power. Next, I get rid of exponents before I get rid of stuff in parentheses, so I get rid of that 3rd power. The way that you get rid of a 3rd power or a 2nd power or a 4th power or a 5th power or whatever is to raise it to like the root of that power. So like if I'm cubing, then I cube root both sides. So if I cube root both sides, it looks something like this. So this whole side gets cube rooted. So I put the little 3 in the corner there, and x plus 1 is equal to, and then when I cube root this side, it just cancels out the cube, so I just get y minus 2. So to get y by itself, one last step, I just need to add 2 to both sides. So I get the cube root of x plus 1, and then outside of that, plus 2 is equal to y, and that is my inverse function. So that would be the answer for number 10. Now let's move on to 11, same steps. Change the f of x to a y, that's step number 1. Then change the x's to y's and y's to x's, so this becomes x is equal to 3y plus 6 over 7. Now, don't get confused with like the fact that you're multiplying a 3 and then dividing by 7. This whole thing in the top, the numerator, is in parentheses, so you need to get rid of that divide by 7 first. So the way that you get rid of division is to multiply, so you multiply both sides by 7 and you get 7x is equal to 3y plus 6. Now you just follow the same algorithm to solve. So subtract 6 from both sides and you get 7x minus 6 is equal to 3y. And then lastly, just divide everything by 3. So on this side, it just becomes 7x minus 6 over 3 is equal to y. And that can be your inverse function. You're all done at that point. Okay, so that's the first 2, and then, same thing for the next ones. I'm just going to do the same steps. F of x becomes a y. And then you change the x's to y's, y's to x's, so x is equal to negative 2, y minus 8. And then solve for y. So add 8 to both sides, you get x plus 8 is equal to negative 2y. And then divide both sides by negative 2, so you get y is equal to x plus 8 over negative 2. And I think it says something different in the solution manual, but or the solutions that the teachers post, but this is the answer that you want. You can divide out the negative 2 to each individual part, but you can just leave it like that. And that's what I prefer, actually, if you just leave it. Okay, and then 13, that one looks nasty only because of that cube root, but it's really not that bad. I'll show you. The g of x turns into a y, just like always, and then we do cube root of x plus 3. Change the x to y's to x, and then we get the y by itself. So first we got to get rid of that pesky cube root. So to get rid of a cube root, in the same way that we got rid of the cube here, we cube rooted, they're inverse operations. So the inverse operation here is to cube this. So we're going to cube both sides. So this side gets cubed, x to the third. And when this gets raised to the third, it just cancels out with a cube root, and you get y plus 3. And then you get y by itself, just subtract 3 from both sides. So you get y is equal to x to the third minus 3. And you are all done at that point. And that is it for the quiz review, right? Yeah, actually the next one's 7-4. Yeah, that's it for this one. So, you know, it's really not a lot of work that you need to do. There's no formulas to memorize or anything silly like that. It's just plugging stuff in, combining like terms, and I guess maybe just, you know the 3-step process to get your inverse functions. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Oh, I guess, you know, one last key thing. Just don't forget about like the domain. It's really easy. Just make sure that when you're dividing, and it always comes up with the division part for 5D when you're dividing two functions, because that denominator can't be equal to 0. So just make sure you set it equal to 0 and find out what that value is and just exclude it. That's your domain. Okay, that's it. Yeah, good luck on your quiz tomorrow or whenever you're taking it. And that's it. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.